Welcome to Cultivated for Thursday, June 6th, 2024. My name is Jay Rosenthal. I'm the co-founder of Cultivated Media, and I'm here with Krista Raymer. She is the founder of Vitrina and their CEO. Krista, I'm going to get to you in a second, but for those that are new to Cultivated, we do this every day. This is Cultivated Live. It's a daily live stream that streams through LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Sorry, I was trying to think of all the places that we stream. And we do it because we like to be industry.
All the platforms.
Many of the platforms, sometimes interchangeably. But we also have a daily newsletter called Cultivated Daily. You can find it at cultivated.news. And we try to be industry first. That means providing you with the most up-to-date, important, useful, and timely information from experts in the industry like Krista Raymer. Krista, where do we find you during this first week of June?
Today, I usually like the homegrown state. I'm in Denver to attend a conference as well as to attend an event with Happy Cabbage this week.
See, so you are it looks beautiful there, by the way. We're missing you here in Toronto, where there's lots of other cannabis events happening. Hall of Flowers is here. The Retail Cannabis Council of Ontario is happening. I think there's one other that's also going on. So lots of people here asking about you and where you are. So I wanted to make sure I knew. But Krista, it strikes me that we talk about this a lot, that we are in prime outdoor season, right? And last weekend was Memorial Day, or 2 weeks ago. How would you be thinking about Memorial Day sales if you were a retailer right now? Because presumably there is some lift, but is it always as it seems?
It is not always as it seems. There needs to be the math. Like, math is a big part of this. And what's funny is what you're talking about is often we hear from groups all the time is after a weekend, they might look at a competitor and see a competitor did something more competitive. Like they did 25% off instead of that 30% off, or they did 30% off instead of 25, for example. And the reality is you have to do a test and iteration and run the numbers to know whether it makes sense. So if you do the work back to say, hey, we did 20% off, but if we had done 25, what would have been the outcome? And how many more transactions would we have needed to sell to be able to offset that discount? And that is like one of the moments where, as a retailer, you have the opportunity to say, yeah, you know what, I think that we would have been capable of that. Or no, let them do their strategy because they have something going on within their business that isn't applicable to ours. And so behind the scenes in all of these stores, everybody has different things or metrics that are important to them. And so you have to keep that into consideration when running the math. So the first step would be to run the math. The second step would be like, once you've run the math, then you know if you want to test something and do a test or iteration of it to see what the impact of something like that is with your customer base.
I'm going to throw a sports analogy at you. Are you ready for it? Because this is what it sounds like to me. Right now in the NBA and college basketball, so many people take so many more three-pointers because they know that a lower percentage of three-pointers actually still equals more points than if they took a higher percentage of two-point shots. But in this case, if you run a higher discount, even though your top line may be better, your bottom line may be worse. And you need to think about that from what it means for your own operation. Yeah, you might drive more revenue, but at a lower profit margin. Therefore, you actually had a worse weekend than if you just did nothing.
Yeah. Sometimes you can just like do nothing and actually get better results, which I think is what people have found after getting through holidays like 420, where you're like, oh, we did a lot of work for a little bit of juice from that. And with your sports analogy, the other consideration is that every team is made up of a different dynamic of players. There are different things working within that team environment to know whether it is effective or not. And the same thing. So unless you copy and paste the exact same strategy with the same number of touch points, you have no idea what all of the communications were that they sent to their customers. You have no idea how the bud tenders were trained. You have no idea what inventory and assortment they actually had to facilitate those deals. It's really hard to sit there and just say, oh, because our competitor did it, it must be better. You have to run the scenario within the confinements of like the team that you have today. And like, are you leveraging the best talents of the team that you've got and the best attributes of the team that you've got?
It actually strikes me, it sort of overlaps with something else you guys posted this week from, I think it was from your feed in particular, which is like using discounts to drive first-time customers, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
you can use that as, I mean, that is a viable thing people do. But if you're actually just capturing that first purchase as opposed to thinking about the next three from that same customer, you've just given your products away for 25% less without actually doing the work to capture that customer to make them come back again, right? And like, it's a little bit of the same thing. You don't know what your competitors are doing, but if you're not taking advantage of that discount to actually drive repeat sales, you're just giving away products for less money.
Great, exactly. Yeah. So with that example with the one-time customers, if your customers come in and are shopping one time, you're going to have a group of customers that are your base that are reoccurring. Like we love them, keep them. And then you have your new customers that you want to add to that base. If you change the format to which you bring those people in, we've essentially increased the cost of customer acquisition. So the moment that you give them a percentage back, you are increasing the cost of getting that customer in. And then when we took a look at the overall revenue, we ran a scenario, was like you would need to generate X number of additional transactions or new customers to break even on the same cost of the offer. And so I think that's where sometimes the forecast of like what something actually going to cost should play a big part of before you even make a decision of testing something, and then being open to test something inside, like what does the impact of that really look like within the business.
Yeah, it all strikes me as I have a high school math student that math actually is really important. Is really important. We're not just making it up.
Yeah, like, and it's helpful just to quantify whether you want to run that risk or not,
Right.
and then be able to analyze after the fact. So
Yeah.
a lot of the time when we are talking with retailers, they catch something after it's been active for quite some time, and that's the moment where it's like we need to run the math on what it looks like in the alternative as well to know whether we should stop it or continue it and whether it's helpful or not.
Yeah. Like fewer better slash repeat customers um, with a smaller discount may be better than more first time customers with a bigger discount, right? It might
Yes.
like you're
Yes.
like it's really running all those scenarios to see how something did, like how
Mhm.
Memorial Day was in this case, but also like how it is when you generally offer 20-25% off to new customers. Do they come back? Could you get away with, that's my word, but like do a lesser discount and actually still have happy customers? And what does that do to your current customer base that is coming
Mhm.
back and seeing all these discounts that don't apply to them? It's you push on one thing and it pushes out the other. It's not always just top line revenue.
Yeah, every decision has an unintended consequence. I think Michigan is a great example of a market that's was seeing extensively high top line, but the net results on that is like we're doing a lot of work, we're like selling a lot of products, we're buying a lot of inventory to not necessarily see the same results. And now it's about optimization. So
Yeah.
now that you have a customer base, like what do you do with that customer base is important.
Yeah.
So
I don't
making sure
know
that you get them past the one transaction is the first step.
I don't know if you saw this. You probably didn't because obviously you're traveling, but I had David Cote on earlier this week from my front porch here in Toronto. And he was talking about his sort of two brands of stores and where they are, and even the differences of customers between and among those
Mhm.
stores
Yeah.
based on the community in which it's operating, based on the physical footprint. Is it in a shopping center? Is it a one-off? Is it a storefront?
Yeah.
All those things. And I obviously always channel you when I'm talking to people like that. Because he was very explicit about sort of the types of customers that come in to each individual store and
Yeah.
understanding sort of their mindset, their time of day, all the things you talk about. And it all factors into, how you bring more people into the store, how you keep them
Yeah.
coming back. And it isn't like set the price here and people will come. It's much more involved than that.
And it's like what portion of the population are going to be tourists as well.
Right.
And like that's kind of maybe the first dynamic, and then understanding how the customer gets to the store. So what did they do before they
Right.
came to the store and what are they doing after will define what types of products they purchase.
Yeah, and I love talking to him from his coffee days at Tim Hortons in the U.S.
Hmm.
He worked for RBI, and he was talking about the different mindset of a Tim Hortons coffee consumer in Buffalo versus a Tim Hortons coffee consumer in St. Catharines is completely different, and that
Well,
I love it.
the legacy is different. Like
Yeah,
the legacy of the brand and the customer experience, and like the St. Catharines customer has nostalgia
yeah,
associated with Tim Hortons. Yeah.
And fewer people in Canada, this is what he was saying as well, fewer people in Canada buy their coffee at a gas station, whereas in the States it's much bigger, especially at the low dollar level, like $1 to $2, right? So like there's just more and different kinds of competition. But I say that because I think it is relevant to cannabis in thinking about your individual consumers that you see in your store, maybe different from store to store if you're a chain, but also thinking about the mindset of the community in which you're operating and what they see on their day-to-day life.
And transaction sizes because of those two behaviors. Like the gas station isn't adding a donut or like a bagel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I'll send you a link. It's he's a great guy, and it certainly has a lot of great things to say about you as well. And I say that's why we have Krista on Thursdays to talk about all things retail, all things cannabis retail, and all the things we should be thinking about. And a lot of them do underpin with math. So I'm going to take this and send it to grade 9 math class next week. Krista, as
Real
always,
life application.
Yeah, that's right. It's a good one. Like at least you and I take similar things and apply it to hockey statistics to get my son in grade 4 talking about math as well. But Krista, thank you as always for time on this Thursday morning. We'll connect with you next week. Safe travels.
Thank you. Have a great week.
You too. That is Cultivated Live for today, June 6th. Join us tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern right here on cultivated.news. You can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. I keep forgetting what else we're doing, but I will remember, I promise. Krista, thanks again. We'll see everybody tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern.